Well, good morning, YouTube world. With the exception of this brief cameo by the beautiful flag of our country and beautiful backdrop of Tarpaulin Cove, today's video is going to be a little low on the eye candy and a little high on the thought process. But I guess most of mine are like that. I guess you've all probably realized by now that this is not one of those channels where I take a beautiful partner and pimp her out for the world and use her charms to draw your eye. Had I a beautiful partner, that's not what I would consider an appropriate use. Anyway, I digress. Today I want to talk about something that vexed me for a number of years, and one of the things about living aboard is it's a little bit like learning a language by immersion. You place yourself so deeply in the situation that the shortest path out is the solution. And this is one of those things that vexed me for quite a number of years before the solution came to me. Straight out of the gate, I want to give a hat tip here to a channel here on YouTube called Far Reach Voyages and express my gratitude to John, a retired Marine who runs that channel, for both his service to our country and his dedication to a YouTube channel of higher standards that strives to present good and practical information. It's a substantial YouTube meal, not a Twinkies meal of eye candy. Anyway, thank you, John. John did a really good similar video about the need to jump in, roll up your sleeves, and solve a problem with a freshwater pump. His video is much better because he did it while he was solving the problem. Today I want to show you a slightly different tack on virtually the same problem. Worth noting also, we have similar boats, similar philosophies on many things. Cape Horn Wind Vane is Cape Dory 36, which was also an Allberg, close to the Allberg 35. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go below and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So way back in the archives, in the discussion of Charis's freshwater systems, I think I mentioned that I have a 2 water pump system that I can switch at the throw of a switch on the panel. Essentially, I have 2 12-volt electric water pumps that are permanently plumbed in, and the failure of one pump, which following Murphy's Law will always be when you have shampoo in your hair, means that you can just come out here, throw that switch, have the other pump kick on, and take over, and then get down to repairing the pump at your convenience. I've done similar things on commercial boats. It's more typical because those are larger pumps with variable pressure settings. Typically those 2 pumps are just always on, and what you do is you stagger the on-off pressure settings of the 2 pumps such that, for example, one pump may kick on at 20 psi and kick off at 30, with the second pump kicking on at 25 psi and kicking off at 35, just as an example. The result of that is that loss of either of those pumps would reduce performance and introduce a wider pressure range to the operation of the system, but would not cause a complete failure. It gives you some time, buys you some time if you're the marine engineer in charge to isolate the broken pump, replace it, get it back online, and very often, in the case of passenger boat, passengers are never aware that anything went wrong. Anyway, this system's a little simpler, just an A-B switch, and so we do have 2 means of getting fresh water from our 4 tanks to the water taps, and that's important. But even more important to me is that, in my humble opinion, one should not be entirely reliant on an electric water pump system to get drinking water out of their tanks. Simply stated, that is still coming back to a single point failure reliance, and that is that you are relying on your electrical system. So in the event of a failure, a lightning strike, battery failure, it could be any of a number of things, you don't want to be without the ability to get water out of your tanks. And some of you will say, well, you can always find a way to siphon or dip water out of the tanks, and maybe you can, but you don't want to be doing that in the middle of an ocean passage. So back here at the galley, the dilemma that I faced for many years is that I've limited real estate. So as mentioned in a previous video, we have here the saltwater pressure system tap. We have the hot and cold freshwater system with the ability to pull that out and use it for doing dishes. And then this little guy right here is really the point of today's discussion. This is a hand pump that was installed in Charis in 1966. For a good number of years I was able to keep it running. I was able to sort of keep it lubricated. It was a simple plunger pump with a vertical plunger that went up and down, and when it was down, it was out of the way. It was below the pressure tap, and simply put, it just was unobtrusive. The problem was that 60 years is a lot to ask of a pump that relies on leather and rubber. And so going back to replace this, what I found is that there is absolutely nothing on the market that did not stick up so high as to essentially interfere with access to the main pressure water tap. So I lived with that dilemma for a number of years, always sort of eating away at the back of my mind, how do I fix this? By the time I got around to removing this pump, it was so badly corroded that I essentially had to sort of cut it out of the counter, which is why you see this little patch of starboard plastic covering the hole where I withdrew the entire pump assembly from below. I do wish that I had some video of this, but as I say, this was done quite a number of years ago now, and long before I had started posting videos. So one day I'd had enough. I pulled this thing out and I thought, well, I'm going to just dig into it and see if I can make parts for it or figure out how to make it work. And so that's what I did. I pulled the entire pump out from below. Now this pump is connected into the freshwater manifold system down here in the bilge through these valves that allow me to select which tank I'm drawing from and which pump that tank water is going to. If you follow those lines aft, they generally ran through this corner up under the galley counter into the pump. Once I had pulled this pump out and apart, it became painfully obvious that there was just no making of parts to get the plunger pump to work again. And as I said, there were no plunger pumps or otherwise, or lever pumps that I could put in this spot that would not block my access to the normal tap. So I sat there in my workshop for a little while looking at this thing, and the thought came to me of, what if this were no longer a pump? What if this head fitting from the old pump simply became a tap, an outlet? And so I set about, and those of you with good vision might look at the top of this and say, isn't that Abraham Lincoln? In fact, it is. That's good old honest Abe. Because what happened was, I ended up with this really nice brass faucet head with the brass cylinder underneath that was still in fine shape, and with a hose barb connection at the bottom of it that could easily be connected to a hose, but no way to actually use it to pull the water. Well, as I sat there and thought about brass, which is largely composed of copper, it occurred to me that copper could be used to plug the old pump plunger hole, hence Honest Abe. So I took an old penny, got to use an old one because the new ones don't have any copper in them. Took an old penny out of my pocket, got some plumber's silver solder, cleaned everything up really nicely and soldered that in. So now we had the former hole from the pump plunger sealed. Underneath it was still pretty tight and sealed, but now I needed a way to get the water to flow through this thing. So we've solved the problem of having a water outlet that doesn't stick up and get in the way of the tap. Now we need a way to push the water through this thing after pulling it out of the tanks in a way that doesn't use electricity, so that we're not simply duplicating on the same problem as the main pressure water system. Well, that came to fruition after searching around on Amazon and finding this little incredibly simple bellows foot pump. Now, I don't know if that looks at all familiar to anyone, or if you can even see it in the poor light in this corner. But this is about as simple a pump as you can get. There's an inlet and an outlet on the back side. There's a check valve. There's a spring underneath this rubber top. And basically when you push down on this, you force water out. When you let go, the spring pushes the rubber diaphragm back up and sucks water in. It is as simple a diaphragm pump as exists, which means it's little prone to failure and easily repaired. That's what I wanted in the manual water delivery system that is the backup to the pressure system. And if this pump looks familiar to any of you, it's because you've been paying attention. If you've ever been in one of those giant deluxe size handicap access porta potties that you'll see at events, the ones that have a little hand wash sink, this pump is exactly the pump that is used in those. And essentially that makes this thing pretty ubiquitous and, truth be told, far less expensive than something that has a marine label on it. So essentially what I managed to do was find a low cost, high availability, and extremely simple pump to pull the water out of the tank, push it through the lines and up to what used to be the pump, but is now just the hose tap in the galley sink. So basically, that's how a penny, little old Honest Abe here, turned a thought into a solution, and a solution turned a vexing problem that faced me for many years into a system that's probably even simpler than the original, certainly more reliable. And that's how sometimes, after staring at something for long enough, it just comes and hits you. I guess that's what they call a penny for your thoughts. Anyway, simple one today. Appreciate you coming aboard, and hope that does someone some good somewhere. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and share and help the word get out. We'll see you next week.